A lot can change in a century. Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're looking at the 100-year evolution of movie heroines. For this list, we're looking at the evolution of female movie characters through the decades. There are always exceptions, but these are the archetypal characters popular in their respective eras that showcase how the portrayal of women in film has changed. The Starlet. The 1920s was a decade when Hollywood really took off, with all 5 of the big 5 studios existing by the mid-30s. With the creation of the cinematic culture industries came other types of manufacturing, including the star image. The star vehicle was invented during the silent era but endured for decades, begun by big names such as Greta Garbo, Mary Pickford, and Clara Bow, in movies like Flesh and the Devil and Coquette.
Well, I told you he made love to me.
Yes, and he was gentle and tender.
No.
Are you sure?
No, it wasn't that kind of love.
How do you know?
Bow herself became the embodiment of the 1920s flapper and was the first it girl. But it was also an era of exploitation and sexism, with women rarely in control of how they appeared, were marketed, or portrayed. Working women. Women in the US gained the right to vote in 1920, and by the 1930s, Hollywood finally began to portray working women. And not just women, but women who had voices of their own thanks to the recent innovation of talkies.
The absence of an heir of my blood. Our Constitution gives me the right to nominate for your approval my successor.
A film like His Girl Friday could not have been made in previous decades. Rosalind Russell played Hildy Johnson, an ace reporter to Cary Grant's newspaper editor Walter Burns.
Been seeing me in your dreams?
No, Mama doesn't dream about you anymore, Wally. You wouldn't know the old girl now.
Ah, yes, I would. I'd know you any time, any place.
Anywhere. You're repeating yourself, Walter. That's the speech you made the night you proposed.
The two are divorced and engage in fast-paced verbal sparring in every single scene.
Oh, listen, Walter. You are no longer my husband and no longer my boss. And you're not going to be my boss.
What's that supposed to mean?
Just what I say.
Then there was Dance Girl Dance, about 2 women trying to make it in the cruel world of show business.
I am just a sweet young thing of 22. Or so.
And it was made by one of Hollywood's earliest female and queer directors, Dorothy Arzner. The Femme Fatale. Today we may look down on women being reduced to a trope like this, but in the 1940s and previous decades, the Femme Fatale was still a popular and exciting character.
Yes, sweetheart?
There's a girl wants to see you. Her name's Wonderly.
Customer?
I guess so. You'll want to see her anyway. She's a knockout.
Initially known also as a vamp, short for vampire, the Femme Fatale is a seductive woman whose power over a male character leads to his downfall.
Use your head. This won't solve anything. Just where did you get the idea I'm going to marry you?
In the 40s, however, the Femme Fatale came into her own as a vital part of noir detective stories.
I inquired at the hotel for the name of a reliable private detective. They mentioned yours.
At the same time, women were also playing different kinds of roles in contemporary war films. Ingrid Bergman's Ilsa Lund embodied support for the men involved in the war effort in Casablanca.
And I said I would never leave you.
And you never will. But I've got a job to do, too. Where I'm going, you can't follow. What I've got to do, you can't be any part of.
The Hitchcock Blonde. One of the greatest directors of all time put a few common features into practically all of his films. And most famous of all was the Hitchcock Blonde.
You better come over here by the fire where it's warm.
A poised and collected platinum blonde leading lady can be found in most of his biggest flicks, played by Kim Novak in Vertigo, Grace Kelly in Rear Window, Dial M for Murder and To Catch a Thief, and most famously Tippi Hedren in The Birds and Marnie.
Why don't you love me, Mama? I've always wondered why you don't.
Despite the enduring idea of the Hitchcock Blonde, it's since been said that Hitchcock's obsession with blondes grew more and more extreme over the years, culminating in him dictating Hedren's personal and professional life. Independent women. The 1960s was a decade of huge social change, with anti-war protests, the civil rights movement, and hippie culture spreading across America. And things changed for women from all walks of life as second-wave feminism came along.
So I'm a choo-choo girl from Choo-Chin-Chow, and how
I'd love to chin and chew with you.
And turn the skies to blue with you.
In 1958, Rosalind Russell had starred in Auntie Mame. the story of an eccentric woman who gains custody of her nephew and teaches him about her progressive lifestyle and beliefs.
Oh, I see what that means. I have the responsibility and your trustee has the authority.
In 1961, Breakfast at Tiffany's gave us Holly Golightly, a New York socialite who lives day to day and throws extravagant parties.
What's that?
Mag Wildwood. She's a model, believe it or not, and a thumping bore. But just look at the goodies she brought with her.
The titular heroine of 1964's Mary Poppins, itself set during the suffrage movement, is another example of the archetype.
Perhaps it's a witch. Of course not. Witches have brooms.
Power players. Powerful and intelligent women came to the fore in the 70s.
Darth Vader, only you could be so bold. The Imperial Senate will not sit still for this.
This was the decade that gave us Princess Leia, who, while she did have to be rescued by Han and Luke in A New Hope, was far from just a damsel in distress, and became one of cinema's cultural icons.
I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you.
You're who?
I'm here to rescue you. I've got your R2 unit, I'm here with Ben Kenobi.
Ben Kenobi, where is he?
Come on.
Other women in powerful positions include Norma Ray Webster in 1979's Norma Ray, based on real-life labor union organizer Crystal Lee Sutton, a feminist icon in her own right. That role won Sally Field an Oscar. Even Annie Hall was a character with loftier ambitions and higher intelligence than her cynical love interest Alvy.
I've been moody and dissatisfied.
How often do you sleep together?
Do you have sex often?
Hardly ever, maybe 3 times a week.
Constantly, I'd say 3 times a week.
The Final Girl. With the booming popularity of horror movies came this reliable character, the Final Girl, the survivor who outlasts the killer and goes on to star in the sequels. This arguably began with Sally Hardesty escaping Leatherface in 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And Laurie Strode surviving Michael Myers in 1978's Halloween. Another candidate is Ellen Ripley, who in 1979 defeated the Xenomorph in Ridley Scott's Alien. The trope went on to become a mainstay of franchises like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and Friday the 13th. In other words, all of the biggest horror franchises in movie history. The term was coined in 1992 and has stuck with us ever since. The Outcast Teen. Who hasn't felt like an outsider every once in a while? The 90s targeted and subverted high school cliques with movies like Clueless and The Croft.
Ugh, as if.
It was a trend that could already be seen in 1988's Heathers, which criticized these stereotypical popular girls in dark ways.
You got power. Power I didn't think you had.
Clueless took a lighter approach, parodying Cher Horowitz's attempts to socially adopt the new girl at school.
And in conclusion, may I please remind you that it does not say RSVP on the Statue of Liberty. Thank you very much.
The effort leads her to question her priorities and become a bit of an outlier herself. The Craft gave us outcast girls with dark powers, while 10 Things I Hate About You capped off the decade with a beloved feminist retelling of The Taming of the Shrew.
Romantic? Hemingway? He was an abusive alcoholic misogynist who squandered half his life hanging around Picasso trying to nail his leftovers.
The Action Heroine. Women were front and center for many big-budget action movies in the noughties. While the origins of the female action hero can be traced to characters like Terminator's Sarah Connor and The Matrix's Trinity, Charlie's Angels and Kill Bill are gold mines for this trope.
Hello, Blondie.
Both series feature numerous highly skilled leads, private detectives in the Charlie's Angels reboot, and assassins in Kill Bill.
Something I've always been curious about. Just between us girls. What did you say to Pai Mei to make him snatch out your eye?
It was also the decade when Angelina Jolie's Lara Croft reached the screen in the original Tomb Raider movies, which were just as over the top as the video games. This continued early into the next decade, with characters like Katniss Everdeen taking over.
Thank you for your consideration.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Superheroes. Superheroes were big business in the 2010s. The MCU became the highest-grossing movie franchise of all time, and the DCEU didn't do too shabbily either. It only makes sense that the best decade for superheroes would also be the best decade for female superheroes.
It's good to see you too, sis. What brings you home?
While for a few years Black Widow remained one of the few female heroes in superhero movies, anti-hero Harley Quinn was undeniably the best part of Suicide Squad. After that, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman was a critical and commercial success,
Then I'm willing to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves.
and finally prompted Marvel to do their own female-led standalone in the form of Captain Marvel.
I have nothing to prove to you.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.